So we are moments away from starting. Before we do so, we couldn't run these sessions without help of our sponsors. So you can see Butter, we're using this right now. If you would like to give it a try, it's one of my favorite platforms for training and workshops, and it's been built by facilitators for facilitators. So if you'd like to give it a try, there is a free 7-day trial available, and you get 30% off your first 3 months subscription. So give Butter a go. And Agile Testing Days is a conference I'm speaking at in November now. Great conference over in Germany, Potsdam. And again, they are a great sponsor of ours. You can get discounted tickets through a link I can provide. So I will pass that on also. Now, the reason you're here is because we have a great speaker today. Ben Collins is going to share some approaches for making decision-making less painful, because all too often it is a bit of a painful process, either individually or at team level. So I'm going to hand over to Ben. He is an Agile lead, a Scrum Master, a coach over in the UK. Had the benefit of working with him, or meeting him a number of times now, and he's the co-organizer of Lean Agile Brighton. Ben is really going to do a better job of introducing himself than I am, so I'm going to hand over to you, Ben. Go for it.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Hopefully you can see my slides that have just popped up. I should say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope you are having a good day so far. As Chris said, I'm Ben. I'm based in England, in Worthing, on the sunny, well, I say sunny, it's chucking it down with rain outside at the moment. Was sunny a few weeks ago, South Coast. As Chris said, I'm an Agile lead at a company called 15 Gifts. We're a lovely small company based down in Brighton. I joined there back in January, coming in with a remit of trying to put in a bit of Agile thinking, change some of the processes, all the kind of things that I expect you know lots about. But we're here today to talk about decision making and trying to make it a bit less painful. So this session is going to be a few bits of interactivity. So if you're wanting to get involved, plenty of opportunity for that. But similarly, there's plenty of moments you can just sit back, and if you're just wanting to sit in and listen, I know some of you will have had long days at work or be thinking of the prospect of a long day at work, that's absolutely fine too. Whatever you want to do, if you want your camera on, fantastic. If you don't, whatever, completely up to you. If you've got any questions, feel free to jump in as you go. There might be times I start moving it along, but I'm happy to be interrupted if there's something important to answer. So let's get stuck in. Bit of a brief preamble as to why I'm here talking about decision making. Does anybody know who this fella is? Anyone recognize him? Either jump in and shout, type in the chat. No one's taking a guess. Any guesses? He links with decision making. Unsurprisingly. So does the name Cyril Northcote Parkinson ring any bells? No. Anyone can think of why Mr. Parkinson here is well known? Ooh.
Parkinson's law, right?
Parkinson's law, spot on. And what's Parkinson's law?
Basically that anything is going to fill the allotted time that it has. So it's going to continually expand given the amount of time that you allow for it to.
Exactly. So work expands to fill the time allotted to it. And you quite often see this with meetings. If you book in an hour-long meeting, surprise, surprise, meeting runs in for an hour. If you book 30 minutes, surprise, surprise, meeting runs on for 30 minutes. Now, Parkinson also has a second law, which we don't hear so much, which I think is even more relevant for this session. So has anyone heard of Parkinson's law of triviality? Or Chris, any tips on the slides? See, we've got a comment on that in the chat.
Best suggestion is if you just cancel your screen share and we'll kick it off again. Hold on.
Stop sharing.
Did happen once before. I think it was someone who joined a little bit later and we just kicked it back off and it was fine.
Okay, is that any better, Joy? Okay, we'll carry on. Oh, no, not any better. What can I do on my end?
Okay, not sure what it is, Joy. The session is being recorded for your awareness, so you can catch up on the visuals later if needs be.
I can share the slides at the end as well, so don't worry about that. Okay, so Parkinson also has his second law, which is Parkinson's law of triviality. What this one says is that people within an organization commonly or typically give disproportionate weight to trivial issues. So you might have heard of this as bike shedding as well. So the idea is you get a load of people in a company, you have this really important issue that needs discussing. Well, not everyone can contribute, so you only get a handful of people involved. However, if you ask them, what color should we paint the bike shed? Well, everyone can have an opinion on that. Everyone's got their favorite color. So everyone weighs in, which means you get loads of contributions. It takes forever and ever and ever. Now, it's good to think about this with decision making, because there's some decisions that need one type of process, some that require another. And what we're going to be doing today is delving through a few different decision making processes, thinking about where we can use them, and trying them out in action so we've got experience of trying them. So the 6 that we're going to talk through today, these are the sort of core 6 structures that I see. We've got consensus, executive, consent, expert, majority popular vote, and default. So for each, I'm just going to give you a few advantages, a few disadvantages, and then we're going to try it out. So first up, we've got consensus. So in consensus decision making, a group gets together and makes the decision collectively. Everybody has to agree with the decision in order to proceed. So say you've got 10 of us or 28 of us as we've got here, you take a decision, everybody needs to commit to it before moving forwards. Some of the advantages of this, it's democratic, it's collaborative, everyone's got a voice, everyone gets in. All views are considered equally. So there's an equal voice. Everyone has the right to say, no, I don't agree with this, we're not going to proceed. You've also got buy-in guaranteed. The whole group's been involved. Everybody's had their say, so they're all going to be bought into whatever we decide. However, there are disadvantages of the processes we've got. It's often the slowest, especially with a large group. You can imagine a decision where all 28 of us here today have to agree. It's going to take a while. Someone might have this little thing that means they can't go along with that decision and they actually prefer a different route. We end up arguing it back and forth. It could take quite a while. In fact, it requires agreement from everybody. Agreement is quite a strong statement to come out and say, yes, I agree with what we're doing. It can lead to awkward stalemates. If I have a preference and one of you have a preference, we can back and forth, and it might be it's really difficult to resolve the decision. And it also sometimes pushes you towards perfection. If you've got a number of options on the table, and actually, you know, most of them you're okay with, but there's this one that you feel is the gold standard, you might be passionately pushing towards that rather than taking the kind of mantra of any decision is better than no decision. So let's try this in action. And for this, I am going to need 4 volunteers. So anybody willing to step forward and be my test subjects for this little experiment of consensus decision making. We've got thumbs up. I can see that one. So we've got Emily, Uzair, Fortune.
We have Uzair, Emily, Amruta, and Fortune. So 4 people.
Perfect. I needed those 4. So let me just write those down. So Uzair. Right, we're going to need you to be talking through this. So this will be fantastic. Sorry. So it's Emily, Uzair, Fortune, and was it Amruta as well?
Amruta, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you, we've got a critical decision to make. Virtually Agile, you know, I was chatting to Chris before this, we decided we're going to adopt a new logo. We're not really, this is just a bit of testing around. So
Damn it, Ben, we didn't think about this.
You can use it afterwards if you want. Hey, you might get something out of this, Chris.
All right.
We've got 4 different logos here as an option. So we've got option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. And you can either decide whether I'm fantastic at graphic design or know how to type in a command to an AI logo generator. So what we're going to do, we're going to decide which logo should Virtually Agile adopt. So the 4 of you, just quickly have a look, see which your preferred option is. And then I'm going to walk around the 4 of you and ask you to tell me which logo we should adopt and why. So Uzair, would you like to go first? Which logo do you feel we should be adopting?
I think we should be going for the second one. It says seems to be, yeah, I think from VA, it gives a sort of symbol and easy to understand, and obviously it's easy to get, and obviously it's less space taking.
Thank you, Azar. So we've got two. So what I'm doing here is facilitator. I'm going to listen to the reasons that you're giving forward, and that will make sense in a minute. Emily, would you like to go next?
So I'd go for number one. I like the colour scheme, a bit more neutral. It's clear, easy to read, and the logo kind of looks like hands together, which I think could be quite a good image to have.
Thank you, Emily. Fortuna, over to you. Which is your preferred logo?
I also prefer two. I think it is going to be more legible than the other three at different sizes. I also like the fact that it is not red, but pink, so it's also visible to people who have, different kinds of color perception, such as color blindness.
Thank you very much, Fortuna. And finally, over to you, Amrita. Which is your preferred logo?
Hi, Ben. I prefer logo number 3 because I think it has the alphabets written are getting highlighted with the background which is present. So I feel it is more easy to read.
Thank you very much, Amrita, and thanks to 4 of you for giving your views there. So what's important now is myself as a facilitator, I'm now going to choose which one I felt had the strongest argument. So it's not whichever one the most people said. So it's only 2 of our group said number 2, but actually it's the one that I felt had the strongest argument for being proposed. So based on what I heard, I'm going to propose that we take logo 1 as our new logo. So what we're now going to do is try and reach consensus, or test whether we can reach consensus on that. And the way we do that is we go around and we ask each person in turn, do you consent to this decision? Are you on board with adopting logo 1? So Azar, over to you first. We're going to go back around the same order. Are you happy with adopting logo 1?
It's difficult, to be honest. Now, I don't like the color scheme. I think one of the point was the color scheme, so I would say it seems to be a bit dark.
Okay, so that's a no from you, Azar. You're not happy to go forward.
No.
Emily, we'll keep going around and just test the room. Are you happy to proceed with logo 1?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Fortuna, what about you?
I like the rationale that the graphic looks like hands together, indicating teamwork. So I think that is really a strong point. I do worry about the readability of the gradation on the lettering virtually agile. I wonder if that reduces readability. But yes, I could, in fact, live with number 1.
Okay, so I've got you as a yes going ahead. And Ruta, how about you? Are you happy to adopt logo number 1?
I think yes, with the reasoning provided. I really like the way how it was proposed, that it's a teamwork with the hands held together. So yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So what's important here, we've had 4 people involved in this decision. 3 people are giving us consensus, saying yes, going ahead, but Azar has said no, so this decision has failed. So I now, as facilitator, have 2 options. I could move on, pivot to a different option, or we could explore if there's anything we can change to try and reach consensus. So the suggestion that I'm going to make, based on what I just heard, is I'm going to suggest that we change the color scheme of logo 1. So usually what I do here is I mock it up, but hey, I haven't got time for that. So imagine logo 1, but with the pink background and white text of logo 2. So again, going around, Azar, would that be enough for you to agree with this decision?
Yeah, I think if the color scheme is more sort of positive and less dark, I would be okay with that.
Thank you, Azar. Emily?
No, I think one of the strongest points about logo 1 is the colour scheme.
Oh, so we've gone from Azar not being given consensus to Emily not giving consensus. Okay, Fortuna?
Well, I actually do like the color scheme of 2 because as I said previously, I think it's more legible and is appropriate for people who with different kinds of color perceptions. So yes, I could live with the proposal to take number 1 in the pinkish color with the white text.
Thank you very much, Fortuna. And finally, Anruta, can you be on board with this decision?
Actually, no, because the way it is right now, I like this, the way how it is present with the dark background.
Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to stop this decision making, because otherwise we're going to spend the rest of my slots talking about which logo we want to pick, which obviously isn't the intention of this, but what we've shown here is how consensus is really hard. We've just had 4 people, we're talking about a logo, and we've struggled to actually make that decision in a reasonable time. And you can see how we could be running around in circles there. If I was carrying on, we might be making suggestions, we might take a group out to come up with alternatives. But yeah, hopefully you're seeing, there we go, horror design meetings was kind of hopefully giving that. And thank you to Azair, Emily, Fortuna and Anruta. You've actually helped me illustrate my point fantastically there. And thank you very much for putting your hands up to volunteer for this one. So maybe Emily, maybe that's not a bad thing though. So what I'd like us to do now, and this is a question to the whole room, in our teams and organizations, when do or could we use consensus in our meetings, in our decisions? So have a think and chuck into the chat any time that you can think of where consensus could be the right process to use or is something you're already using. I'll just give you 30 seconds to a minute to type in your answers. So thanks, Amrita. We've got a suggestion for a yes or no decision. Shared responsibility and accountability. Deciding where to get lunch, I like that one. High commitment, definitely Fred. Scope of impact, screen on time slot. Smaller teams, yeah, definitely a smaller team makes it easier. When something isn't urgent, I was getting a bit of echo from someone here.
Just muted everyone, Ben. Feel free to unmute yourself and carry on.
Fantastic, thank you. So consensus is more than often than not is not achievable, and you defer to our decision-making approaches. That's definitely something to consider. I'd say definitely for something high risk, you've got a small group, potentially a leadership team looking to pivot completely on strategy or something like that, maybe you would want consensus. But there might be some decision-making processes later on that take some of the good things about consensus and make it a little bit easier. So if you've got any more ideas, chop them in. But we're now going to move on to executive decision-making, which is otherwise fondly known as HIPPO. And the HIPPO is the highest paid person's opinion. So this is where the most important or most senior or highest paid individual makes the decision. Doesn't matter how much they know, doesn't matter how little they know, they're going to come in, they're going to make the decision, and they're going to walk straight out that room and let the consequences settle. Advantages, it's really quick, and the hippo leaves happy. Well, usually, that can be a good thing. The hippo is maybe someone who's paying you, so maybe you might want the hippo to make the decision. However, only one person's view impacts the decision. The hippo could be the least qualified person in the room. You don't get any diversity in opinion, it's just one person's view, and you can get morale and buy-in issues. So let's see this in action. And I'm going to nominate Chris. I think you're our resident hippo. You've set this up, you've gathered us today. So you can be the highest paid person or the most important senior person. I'm going to ask you to make a decision here. Okay, this might look a little bit familiar. Which logo should Virtually Agile adopt? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
None of them.
None of them. Oh, you like your current logo better?
I think I've seen some of the feedback. The 3 and 4 to me are too illegible. You can't make out what the words of the Virtually in particular say. Number one, quite dark text, has another company's brand image in it. Looks very much like OpenAI. And the second one is just not my color scheme. You can probably guess I like red, black, and white.
There we go. Decision made. Thank you, Chris. We are going to adopt none of those logos. There we are. That was a bit quicker than the last one. Pink is new black. There we go.
Oh, I love wearing pink for awareness. Just it just doesn't. I would have to rebrand everything if I did this, and that just sounds like a nightmare right now.
So think about executive decision making. Now, I'm going to ask you, when do or could we use this in our teams or organizations? Feel free to share any horror stories you've got of when hippo decision making came in and was completely inappropriate, because they're always good to read. But are there any times as well where maybe actually hippo decisions are appropriate? There we are. We've got the dangerous animals, hippos in there. So again, type into the chat. When could or should or do we currently use hippo executive decision making in our organizations? So yes, we've got the idea of breaking a deadlock or in a crisis. So with maybe in a deadlock, we've been using one of the other decision making. So it could be we just tried consensus, couldn't get anywhere. Maybe the hippo can come in and have a deciding vote. Or in a crisis where we don't have the time to make another decision or use a different decision making structure. An expert decision needs to be made that others don't have capability or knowledge to decide upon. Might come back to that one later, Chris. Bold decisions where people can't see past constraints. Yeah. People aren't ready or don't feel safe, it usually gets left to a hippo for someone to come in and be the executive and make that choice. Tie-breaking vote. The hippo is ultimately responsible, yep. So if it's going to fall on someone's head to have made the decision, then maybe they should be the one making it. Anything unpopular, yep. So again, keep sending in if you've got any ideas. But again, we will just move on now. That one's a lot quicker than the consensus. Decisions can be quick, they can be slow. Going to move on to consent, which I think is the one that's probably, to me, when I've seen it, is most misunderstood and potentially misused. So the idea of consent is, think about the consensus. We're going to get a group together. We're going to make a decision collectively. However, instead of everyone having to agree with a decision, with consent, nobody raises a reasonable objection against whatever has been proposed. So it doesn't mean that someone making a decision has to agree or everybody making a decision has to agree. What it means is they can't see harm in that decision coming. The question I quite often ask with this is, for a reasonable objection, is, do you see this decision causing any harm to you as an individual, you in your team, or the company as a whole? If actually the decision's not going to bring us harm or bring us lots of risk, then you can give consent. You don't have to agree with it, but you just don't see any reason why it can't proceed. So advantages, again, like consensus, it's quite similar. It's democratic and collaborative. Everyone's got an equal voice. But instead of looking for perfection, we're quite often looking for a decision that's just good enough. We're not looking for the absolute right thing that everybody's on board with, but it's one that nobody's against. Nobody's dead set on this will cause us problems. So we're not striving for the perfect answer here. However, it's not necessarily natural to participants. So as a facilitator, that can be quite hard to explain. Instead of saying, right, Inga, for example, do you agree with this decision? I'm having to go in and say, do you have any reasonable objections? Is there any reason why this decision can't go ahead? So sometimes you need a bit more of a thorough process, which can slow down decisions, especially with a large group. You can also start over discussing a problem, analyzing, getting into that analysis paralysis, where you're trying to break down, hang on, can I go ahead with this? Can I not? Should we try and learn more? And there's also the fact that reasonable objectives can be subjective. If someone doesn't like something, it can be quite easy to still make up a reasonable objective and sort of say yes. And that's where, as a facilitator, you need the power of listening and challenging and understanding and trying to really get to the crux of why we can't proceed with the decision. So again, we're going to walk through this as a group, and I'm going to ask for 4 volunteers. So there are 4 different people who would like to get involved and help us make a decision today. Or it could be the same people. Any volunteers here? Matthias, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can jump in. David here.
Is there David?
David is Matthias. One more person. Fortune again.
Absolutely fine. Right, let's go for it. So, good news, everybody. Logos are gone. We've got a different decision to make now. Which slogan should we adopt? Now, these are pretty terrible. It took me a while to actually find 5 that we could have. So, slogans we've got is Agile from anywhere, lean and mean, Agile mindset, global reach, Agile without borders, or the future of Agile is virtual. So they're the 5 slogans. Imagine we've had all these workshops in the company, we've got together, company have sent it in, and these are the 5 that we've come up with as a shortlist, which was definitely a longer process than what actually happened of me spending 10 minutes with ChatGPT asking for slogans. Which of these, again, it's going to be a similar process to a consensus. I'm going to go around the room, ask you one at a time, which one you feel is the strongest and the reasons why. And I'll be listening in and trying to pick up on the reasons you're giving. So, Fortune, do you want to go first this time? Which of these slogans should we adopt?
Yes, I think number 3, agile mindset, global reach. And I like that because it emphasizes one of the most important aspects of Agile, which is mindset. And the fact that it is global is the whole point of going virtual. So to me, that sort of summarizes the enterprise very nicely and in a graphic way.
Thank you, Fortune. Matthias, what about you?
I would say probably number 5 because it really sounds something like something that Steve Jobs would say or someone like this. It really like focuses on the future and could attract investors or something like that.
Thank you, Matthias. Uzair, what's your choice?
I would go for 5th one as well because the word future generally has a sort of a high sort of perceptivity, I would say, and especially in the slogan, if you have that future, it does make a difference.
Thank you, Uzair. And then over to you, David. Which one are you proposing we choose?
I would go with agile mindset and global reach because it is a mindset. At the end of the day, it's a philosophy, and we would want it to have a global reach.
Okay, so now again comes to my position as facilitator to listen to the arguments and decide on which one I felt had the strongest argument behind it. Again, not which had the most votes, so it was split on this one, which was the strongest argument. So I'm going to propose number 5 because I quite like the argument of I can imagine it as something that Steve Jobs would say, that kind of powerful, impactful statement. So what we're now going to do, again, I'm going to go around the room and ask whether anyone has any reasonable objections. So it's not whether you agree with adopting number 5, but can you see a reason why adopting this slogan would harm yourself as an individual, the group that we have here, or I guess virtually Agile as a collective? So Fortune, do you have any reasonable objections to adopting the future of Agile is virtual as our slogan?
No, I think not. My only concern, though, is that it's about the future and not about the present of Agile. But of course, we're doing Agile now in the present as an empirical process. But no, I don't think it's incredibly harmful.
Cool. So you've sort of, it's not necessarily the one you to choose, it's not the one you're going for, but you're happy to give your consent to proceed with that one. Okay. Matthias, what about you? You're on mute if you're talking here, Matthias.
Sorry, I wasn't here for a moment. What is happening now?
That's okay. So we are choosing to adopt the future of Agile is virtual as our slogan. So the question is, do you have any reasonable objections to this decision? Is there any way you could see this causing harm to us as a group?
No, not at all. I choose the option, so no.
Yeah. Uzair, what about you?
For me, I already said the 5th one.
Perfect. So you're happy to give consent with that decision. Fantastic. David, what about you? Can you see any reasonable objections with this?
got a slight concern on this because when I read it, I would think it could imply the future of Agile is virtual and only virtual, whereas I think nothing beats face-to-face and in-person interaction and collaboration.
So do you consider that a reasonable objection in terms of adopting this would harm us as a group?
I would say it's a stone in my shoe. I can still walk, but obviously I don't want that stone in my shoe. But if I had to, if push comes to shove, I would say it would be. Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, it would be. So again, in this case, we haven't reached consent. And what's quite interesting there is, I was sort of, Fortune, your answer, I was sort of thinking in that one, in the consensus world, that might have been a, no, I can't give consensus. I'm not on board with this decision because of the concern that you had. Whereas actually with consent, you get to that point where actually, maybe I'm not going down this path, but actually I'm happy enough with it. So we've got a suggestion here actually from Matthias, which is saying Agile is the future. So again, I'm going to go around. I quite like that adaptation of what we've got. I'm going to go around and again test for consent. So are there any reasonable objections you've got to adopting Agile is the future as our new slogan? So Fortune, what about you?
No, I don't think it's harmful to Agile values or the Agile principles, and it's optimistic. So yes, I could be actually very happy with that.
Thank you, Fortune. Matthias, you made your suggestion. I'm assuming you're happy to give consent to this one, but I've always got to go in and check.
Yeah.
Perfect. Uzair, how about you?
Yeah, I think okay from my side.
Thank you. And David?
No objections from me on this one. No.
Fantastic. So we have reached our decision, everybody. Fantastic. I think this deserves, I'm trying to find the react thing. There we go. That deserves a party, doesn't it? Excellent. So again, we've seen consent in action. I think it's interesting. Oh, sound effects and everything. Look at that. I think it's good to consider the difference between consent and consensus. And Fortune, I'm just going to ask you, how did that feel doing consent compared to consensus? Because obviously you were in both of those.
Well, I think it's very important to think about the principle of harm avoidance or harm reduction. That may not always occur in a consensus decision. Do you know what I mean? So I do prefer the emphasis on harm reduction.
Thank you. And what about you again, Uzair? You experienced both of those. How did they feel compared to each other?
I have a similar view that I think in consensus, you sort of looking at the whole sort of responsibility and you consider yourself sort of fully responsible for that decision. So you're trying to give everything that you can to what you think is the best thing. Whereas in the consent, I think you're just trying to limit the risk there for yourself.
Thank you. Thanks everybody again for joining in and being the participants in that example. And hopefully you got a bit of both what it's like making a decision, but also how to run through that decision. So again, I'm going to ask you as the wider group, when do or could we use this in our teams or organizations? So are there any times that you in decision making are using consensus, or are there any times you're thinking actually that could be a really powerful process for us to use? That's a good comparison, David. The consensus being collaborative, consent being personal. There's definitely a I want to win with my decision. If you're pushing forward and saying I have to agree. Choosing from options, depending on the population, tough decision that requires alignment. If it's sensible, you give the floor to show that objections aren't really reasonable. It's definitely a power that the facilitator holds in that one, as opposed to I'm on board or I'm not. It's going to impact you personally. Estimation, that's definitely one that I always like calling out. You think about planning poker and those kind of activities where you go to the room and you say, you know, how many points do you think this is going to be, or what t-shirt size, or whatever estimation you're using, and you might get, say you've got 6 people, you might get 3 people put 8, 3 people put 13, whatever. You're not necessarily going to keep going around with consensus decision making there, where you want everybody to keep going until they agree on a number. What you might do is you propose, well, you know, are we happy enough with putting a 13, or are we happy enough with putting an 8? Is that going to cause us harm? Okay, so let's move on. We've got 2 more types of decision to go through. So we've got expert. Now, expert is a bit similar to executive. So you've got consent and consensus that sit quite similar. You've got expert and executive. And I said we've got 2 more to go through. We've actually got 3 more. Yeah, an extra bonus one at the end, look. So with expert decision making, an individual is allowed to make the decision. However, executive, you had your highest paid, most powerful person come in. Actually here, the individual to make the decision is chosen based on their existing knowledge and experience. Now that is a subtle difference to just the most powerful person coming in. The advantage is similar to executive. It's pretty quick. On the whole, you've got one person making the decision. You don't have to go through those rounds of consent or consensus. And also, it potentially has some involvement from the team. It might be, you know, imagine you've got a development team, and between them, they're trying to work out a decision. They might collectively go, well, actually, you know, this person, you're the most experienced in this issue. We're happy delegating that decision to you, and we're on board with what you choose. So there's a bit more involvement from a wider team in that they might choose the expert, and they might do that via consensus or consent. Potentially, you might mix up those decisions to get to a final choice. Disadvantage is a bit similar to executive. You've only got one person's view coming into account. Now, you'll hope that the expert's going to take on board other views, listen to other stakeholders, listen to people who care before they make the decision. But really, it's one person's choice at the end of the day. You might choose the wrong expert. It might be you've got this particular technical problem. You think someone's an absolute whiz because they just joined the company and they were brought in for that knowledge, and actually maybe they don't quite know what they're doing. And similarly, no diversity in opinion. And that's a good point, Chris, as well, where you sort of put earlier about is that Hippo might be the expert, and I think that's good, that assumption that it might be the niche or skilled person, but similarly could be in a company where you're talking about a technical decision and the executive Hippo coming in from a sales background, for example, coming in and saying, right, we're going to do this, we're going to build this in this way. I've heard that, you know, for example, might come in and say, I've heard Scrum's fantastic, it's worked everywhere, so team that you've been working perfectly well using a Kanban system, swap over to Scrum because that's best, and they might not have that expertise. So this is where it gets tricky. Does anyone want to nominate themselves as our resident expert? Does someone feel that they know more about decisions or about Agile or slogans particularly than anyone else? Don't be shy. Someone must feel like an expert. And does anyone feel like an expert in absolutely any field? Fred. Fantastic. Fred, what would you say you're an expert in?
We'll say Agile today.
Agile. We've got an Agile expert here. Fantastic.
I'm an expert in making bad decisions.
Expert in making bad decisions. Okay. That might be relevant for these slogans, to be perfectly honest. But here we go. Which slogan should we adopt? Agile from anywhere, lean and mean, Agile mindset, global reach, Agile without borders, or the future of Agile is virtual?
I'll say as an Agile expert, the third one. With mindset, I really like the mindset comment from earlier. Is also aligned with how I think.
Agile mindset, global reach. There we go. Decision is made. Again, a lot quicker. And what I think is quite important to reflect on with these examples that we've gone through is the decisions we're making. They're a bit trivial, really, and they're probably verging on the bike shedding. And that if you're using these decisions and you're going for consensus or consent, you're probably going overkill when you're talking about a logo or a slogan. But it's really hard in these kind of examples to actually get into a decision that's deep enough to go through with consent or consensus without me going through a whole set of PowerPoint slides teaching you about a particular topic. So it's quite a good illustration on there's some decisions that maybe expert and executive work well for, but you have to think there's plenty of others where you want to use consensus or consent. So again, when do or could we use expert decision making in our teams or organizations? Answers in the chat. I was going to say on a postcard, but that reference might not be relevant to everyone, and we'll be here a long time waiting for the answers. So we've got technical decisions where a subject matter expert is needed, where the skill's rare, definitely. It was a good point we were saying about how Fred, when he was making his decision, referred a decision from another attendee. So that's where, as an expert, you've come in and potentially you're making the decision, you're accountable, you've been trusted potentially by the team, but you've actually listened to input from others and got that feedback and got those ideas. Cross-functional projects, so not everyone's a great facilitator, but get the great facilitator in to help. If you don't have the knowledge internally, you might be going out to another team where they've worked on a particular issue and you want to get their opinion. Very new or high-risk technology or architecture, systems decisions. Sometimes this comes in where you've got a consultant in. Imagine, obviously AI has become a big thing over the last few months. Maybe you don't have any internal AI expertise, but you're looking to go into that field. You might want to bring in a consultant to help you make those first decisions on the path. And quite like that, when you want the expert to take the heat if it goes wrong. So the delegation of responsibility of actually, Fred, it's on your head. Everyone else hates this slogan. Not my problem. I like that. Okay, so let's go on to the last two. We've not got any examples for these because it doesn't really work. But majority or popular vote. So this is the decision-making process that I think people are most familiar with. Mostly because you see it in, maybe reality TV shows. Actually, my Agile face, I love that. You see it in reality TV shows. You see it potentially in political elections sometimes, depending on where you live. But it's where people come in and they have a vote. So you have two options or a number of options. You come in and cast your vote. And there's two variations on how you get the result here. So you have majority voting, which is where you say 50% of the people voting, of the population of this decision, need to vote for an option in order for it to be chosen. Obviously, if you've got, say, 5 or 6 options, maybe one option's not going to get 50%. So quite often what you do with that is you rerun the vote, the lowest gets eliminated, and you keep going until an option has over 50% of the vote. Popular voting is very similar, but you don't have that 50% threshold to meet. Whichever vote option gets the most votes will win. Advantages. It's quite easy to explain. People tend to get the concept of I have a vote, whatever gets the most votes makes the decision. It's process light. Matthias, you're getting onto some of the disadvantages here. Fantastic. Process light, you tend to be able to explain it quite easy. Here, have a vote, stick up a poll, see what happens. Everyone's got an equal voice, so everyone has one vote. And it can easily be used for ranking as well. So a lot of the consensus, consent, don't work quite well if you're wanting a first option, second option, third option, fourth option. If actually you're looking to order a number of things, then potentially majority or popular vote can work quite well. Disadvantages, you create a scenario of winners and losers. So for those of you familiar with UK politics, I refer to the Brexit referendum, where there was the vote as to whether the UK should leave the EU or should remain. It was a majority vote. People could go and vote. You had a choice. I'm team leave, I'm team remain. And you end up with a vote where 52% vote leave, 48% vote remain. Now, you don't have much buy-in with a decision like that, where you've got two polar opposite and passionately fought viewpoints. 52% come away going, yeah, we got what we want. And the other 48% are left going, hang on, we're almost half the population of the vote. We're actually dead set against what's happened. So it can create that scenario of a choice for winner, a choice for loser. For some situations, that's okay. But other decisions where they're particularly important, and particularly there, Matthias, your point, political election where people haven't done the research on who or what they're voting for, haven't necessarily got full understanding, then maybe this isn't the best model. Maybe you're better going to an expert or a panel of experts using consensus or consent potentially. You can easily reach a decision that the almost majority disagree with fundamentally. So that's the point I was making with the Brexit referendum. And it's democratic. Everyone has a vote, everyone has a say, but it isn't collaborative. You might have discussions on what happens, but it's not a case where you get together, you talk about, I prefer this option, I prefer that option, what should we reach the group? Instead, it becomes simple as, this is my vote, I can walk out and just wait for the decision to happen. So again, I think you're used to this by now. When do or could we use this in our teams or organizations? Lunch, definitely an important one. When we have a large amount of people voting, union voting, polls. Dates, times of events, upvoting on questions, Q&A. Yeah, lean coffee, definitely, where actually you've got the topics. Something maybe gets the most votes, but we're going to move on to something else later. So I've got a question for those of you who run retrospectives here. Imagine you're kind of what I call your kind of typical retrospective, which Chris has got plenty of templates for these. You've got questions, you create stickies, you put in your options, and then it gets to the point where you need to decide what to discuss. You've gathered loads of ideas. How do we decide what we discuss? Which of these models do you find can work well? And are there any problems with certain ones? Dot voting's just come in there. So what are the challenges with dot voting? Or the drawbacks?
Well, I always use ranked choice dot voting, but it can take new people some time to feel confident and safe enough to make a public vote. And they might prefer at first, until they have established their own sense of psychological safety, a private or confidential vote.
Yep. Thank you, Fortune. We've got the bias coming in the chat based on votes. Any other suggestions? So, story I can tell about a team I was in quite early in my career as a Scrum Master. So this team, we had 3 back-end focused developers, and we had 1 UX designer working together, collaborating as a team. Fantastic team, worked well. We get to the retros, and what I was doing in the retros, I was doing questions up on the board, stick up ideas, and then dot vote. It took me a while to realise that the sort of UX designer in there, they put up loads of ideas, they're passionate, they had these great ideas, and then when it got to taking an action and discussing some of the topics, I realised they went quiet, they weren't raising anything. I was like, oh, it's a bit strange, they're quite vocal. So I started looking back at the things we discussed, and actually what was happening is we were using dot voting. You had the 3 back-end developers are coming in and they're voting for maybe some of the more technical aspects, they're voting for things that had affected them as back-end developers. Like fairly, that's how they cast their vote. They were the most important issues to them. But there were 3 of them, and there was only 1 of the UX designers. There were some really important things that would have made our UX designers' life a lot easier and helped them out, but it was never getting discussed because the dot voting was always overshadowing what they decided. So there's various other options. In some teams, you might have an even split of experience knowledge. You might have a load of full stack developers, and it's going to be okay. You're not going to get that outweight of one group over another coming in. But in other situations, you might want to look to something else. So you can use more consensus or consent-based, probably not to the level of the example we've given. Something I've used, it's kind of quick and easy. You can use, it's called Polka prioritization, which is where you just get everyone, get the list of topics in a line. You say you have to order them from least important to discuss to most important to discuss, and they have to do that in silence. People move things backwards and forwards. So it kind of looks like they're doing a bit of a polka dance back and forwards. If something moves and you're not happy with it, you move it back again, and you keep watching the things moving back and forward until they settle in. And you can double up on the polka bit by playing polka music while they're moving it around in silence, which tends to get a few good laughs and tends to also speed up the decision making because people want the music to end. But it's quite good in that if someone's got something they really passionately want to discuss, they've got as much power to move it to the front as anyone else. It can't get outweighed by 3 people trying to move it back. You tend to find eventually things settle into that consent kind of way of people are happy enough with this, they don't see any problems with it going ahead. So yeah, that's something you can sort of try out. And there's also other ways you can do points allocations, multiplying up the impact and the effort of making a change. Not coming across white elephant, it might be I've basically borrowed something else and tried it out there. But yeah, so I mean, this is something as simple as dot voting at the end of a retrospective decide actions. You've always got to think of where's the bias that we're putting in, how is this potentially giving someone less of a voice than someone else. So yeah, something to consider. So we get into the last one, which I struggle calling this the decision-making process, but it's kind of in here for completeness, which is default. Now, default decision-making is what happens when nothing else is used. Say a question got asked and nobody gets together to talk about it. Well, eventually, if you just put off making that decision long enough, something just happens. Someone will just pick a logo, or someone will just get on with something. And it kind of is where no decision's made, so something ends up happening by default. So what are the advantages? It proves that a decision didn't really need to be made. We didn't need to get together in a room and talk about this. Someone could have just gone and done their job and made it happen. Disadvantages: it can take a long time potentially, as everyone sits and waits for a decision to be made before someone eventually takes the plunge and makes it. You haven't got any buy-in, it just happens. It's also a bit wasteful. You've potentially spent a bit of time discussing it already, talking about, let's get together, let's talk this out, when really you didn't need to. I feel this is a bit of a trivial question to ask, but hey, let's ask it. When do or could we use default decision making? Are there any decisions you can think about in your teams or your organizations where something happened by default, or actually maybe something could have happened by default? Returning to work, yep. Something with minor impact where we need a decision made. No decision, no change. If we know from previous similar situations a trend, if we're scared to make a controversial decision, we just kind of put it off until it just happens. Super important to decide, but no one else is on board, and then another action overrides or change your mind. Yeah. All options are equally good or bad. Getting to a bit of the territory of a decision is better than no decision as well with this. Right? It's just better to get on with it. And it might be you just need to step in as an executive or a hippo or an expert as well if you feel that actually this thing's just being punted down the street and we need to get a decision in. Okay. So there we have it. We've been through 6: consensus, default, consent, expert, majority, popular vote, and executive. 6 different. I hope you've sort of come away with ideas of where you can use different decision-making processes. And the thing I'd always advise is the kind of more general tips with any of these, particularly if you're looking at consensus and consent, and particularly in the sort of virtual or hybrid world that a lot of us are working in now, is only get together the people you need to make a decision. Consensus and consent, imagine doing that with 20, 30 people. Imagine if I'd said for all of us, we're each going to go around and pick our favorite logo or slogan. It'd have taken forever. So one of the most important things is only getting the people together who you need to make a decision. It's really easy to actually stretch it out wider and go, well, we can just invite them to the call because they just have to dial in. That becomes wasteful. It takes longer. It takes effort. So that's the kind of number one thing I'd say is get the right people in to make the decision and then pick the right process for the decision. And I'm ending a couple of extra slides here. Techniques for processes. Yeah, I think some of them are probably processes by default. They're choices you can make in how to make it. There's not much of a process to apply to it. Got a bit of a cheat sheet. This is the kind of one that if you imagine I was in a screen conference, that's what I'm saying, get your phone out, take a photo, but I'll share the slides. So, hey, you can see this later on. It's one of those I was kind of hesitant to put in because it's a bit of a wall of text, bam, slide, but it's quite useful as a bit of a overview of the process, group size, level of involvement, and equal voice, and also the speed. And a final little shout out, as Chris mentioned at the start, I co-organise Lean Agile Brighton Meetup and Conference. For those of you not in the UK, might be a bit far for you to travel in, but those of you in the UK, if you fancy joining us on Thursday, 19th October, we're getting together in person in Brighton. Got a full day of talks. There's tickets on sale now. Got a handful left. Got some fantastic speakers joining us, and there's a 10% off code as well. So thank you for listening to me today. So yeah, I've got a couple of links to share. I'll share the slides with Chris afterwards, but I'm just going to chuck a link to the conference in there in case you're interested. And also, if you'd like to chat about this afterwards or you'd like to connect with me, I'll just put my LinkedIn link in the chat as well. So thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you for those of you who helped us make some decisions today. And yeah, I hope you've taken away something interesting to take back to your teams and organizations. I should say, are there any questions as well?
Go. Any questions? AMA time for Ben.
Oh, come on, you're not going to give me this easy a night, are you?
I just had a, well, not really a question, so more a suggestion, and in that rather than to help distinguish, I guess, between consensus and consent, if the consent model was termed a veto, as to, which is a term I've used in before in certain circumstances to say, you know, if you really don't like it, you can veto this decision, and explain why. Just a thought on that.
Yep, so that would be very much for the consensus, wouldn't it? Where if you're not happy with that decision, then goes. It's kind of flipping the "do you agree with this" to the "do you not agree with this" kind of way.
Yeah. To help make that distinction between the two, possibly.
Thanks, Jason. It's a great suggestion. And yeah, there are many ways you can run those consensus and consent. I've sort of given a template that you can use, but there's quicker ways, there's slower ways to tailor it. See a question in chat. What's my go-to decision-making model? I mean, the cop-out answer is it depends, which is your classic Agile answer, isn't it? But it genuinely is. I like consensus on the whole, where you've got the level of the reasonable objection. Someone answer, there we go. So consensus tends to be the one I would go to for an important decision within a team, particularly if you've got the team I'm currently in. We've got 3 really passionate back-end architects with great ideas. So I tend to like using consensus with them, where actually each of them could have their own preferred option, but we just need an option that can precede us, because otherwise if I left them to decide on their own accord, they'd probably keep talking about it for the next 3 weeks. Top 3 go-tos: consensus, consent, consensus, and then probably majority vote. But it depends. It depends on your group, depends on your problems. I'm going to Chris, you've got a comment, I think, and then I'll go to Eric's question.
I was just going to add that my approach to this is usually to agree with the team how we make decisions together, and that could include adding it to a team charter. You co-create that together at the beginning. You might make them aware of the different protocols or decision-making processes that are there, and get them to agree which ones work for us in our situation. And as Ben says, it's not a one-size-fits-all. There may be some that are better suited to particular decisions that need to be made.
I think, well, it fits in the whole Shuhari way of thinking as well. If you're very much in the Shu stage, you've got an immature team, maybe you want to come in and say, we're just going to make a decision this way and follow my rules and learn about it. And then you can get into that hardware phase where you're starting to understand why we make the decision that way and start having a bit more input into actually, for this decision, let's go this way, for that decision, let's go that way. But definitely having that team charter, working agreement kind of level of, for a decision like this, we will use this model. That's a really powerful way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. The working agreement is the way to go to get the democratization of your teams. It gives them ownership and buy-in. Ben, I'm wondering, can you give us an example of where just things totally fell apart with the decision-making model that you thought was going to work?
Yes, I'm trying to recall the exact decision. So a lot of the way I've introduced consensus comes from the world of sociocracy, so the way of structuring organizations and making decisions, the pillars there. And one company I was at, all of the leadership decisions, any of the executive decisions were being made through consensus. And there was one situation, and I can't, you're talking 5 years ago, I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but there was one particular person who had this knack for finding problems with the least bit of thing. And sorry, I said we use consensus, we're actually using consent. So it was a critical objection, reasonable objection. And it seemed that this one decision, no matter how we phrased it, no matter how we changed it as a group, no matter how we went away in a working group, revised it, this one person would always come in and had a bit of a, no, there's an objection because there's this, there's an objection because of that. And they would always find new and creative ways to stop a decision going through. And we did end up in that kind of analysis paralysis where the same decision went through 5, 6 or so meetings trying to evaluate it. And we were sticking with the consent decision making because actually that was what the company structure said. We sort of had the working agreement essentially for the organization where any of these critical decisions would be made by consent. Then we actually started looking at the decision and going, well, does this actually need consent? Is this of a level of importance where it's needed? So we had to actually make that decision to escalate up to effectively, I think it was an expert decision where as a group we chose who could make the decision and they came in and said it. So you've got to be wary sometimes that if you don't have the right people and if someone's got a particular agenda to a degree, it doesn't matter if you're trying to do the democratic ways of consensus, consent, the involved ways, there's some people who are just going to play the game sometimes and make those decisions really difficult. So you might need to fall back to the less democratic ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm. When you run into challenging personalities and all of a sudden you've got like 4 or 5 meetings and that's a lot of money. Okay, that's great. Thanks, Ben.
That's okay. Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
All right, folks, I think we'll call that there. Thank you, Ben, for a great session with us today. Very interactive. Love that. And although you didn't speak to me about the various branding elements of Virtually Agile, I'm okay with it. It was good. Good work. Let's show some appreciation for Ben. The soundboard is now available, so feel free to give him some audible reactions as well as the one that appears on your screen. That always feels good after a session.
Come on, where's the booze? Where's the booze?
Well, you didn't have many of these.
There we go.
And then there's some secret ones like this. Gets a bit noisy, but all good. Right, let's stop those for just a moment. Obviously, I couldn't be me without asking for feedback about these sessions. We do so for the pursuit of continuous improvement. When you click out of the session today, you will be asked by Butter to provide some feedback. That will be really useful for us and Ben as well. And what I'm keen to hear from you is what you'd like to hear or experience in future sessions. So just take a moment to fill out that poll that's appeared on your screen. Is there guests you want to see, type of sessions you want, things you like more or less of? It's pretty open-ended. Just share your perspective before you go. It's all welcome and appreciated. And the Virtual Agile team will endeavor to do our best to accommodate accordingly. We have shared in the chat some of our next sessions. We've got Anthony Savalas on the happiness blueprint, positivity experiments. We've got Lean Coffee with a Twist. I'll be hosting that, and that's a variation on the Lean Coffee format I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And Dysfunction Mapping with Michael Lloyd in October as well. Workshop and interactive sessions. All right. Well, I know Michael Lloyd has a very interactive approach to dysfunction mapping, which I know David has personally experienced because he was in a workshop with him just yesterday. So I can certainly ask about that. Okay, you don't have to wait to send feedback inside here. So do feel free to reach out to us at any time. It's always welcome. Especially if you've got particular topics in mind. I will do my best to charm any names you mention into joining us on the meetup. All right, folks. Till next time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Fred, for helping me facilitate.
Thanks for having me, everyone. It's been great to meet you.